Hey there, welcome to the Posit Data Science Hangout. I'm Libby Heron, and this is a recording of our weekly community call that happens every Thursday at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you are not joining us live, you miss out on the amazing chat that's going on. So find the link in the description where you can add our call to your calendar and come hang out with the most supportive, friendly, and funny data community you'll ever experience. Can't wait to see you there. Olivia, I'm so happy to have you here today. Could you introduce yourself and tell us something that you like to do for fun?
Sure. Thanks, Libby. Olivia Hebner. I'm a data science manager here at Summit. We are a data science and analytics firm working mostly with federal clients. We have some state clients and commercial work as well. Um, Something fun. I say that this is something fun half the time and something I hate half the time, but unfortunately, I'm a runner. So I like to torture myself by running half marathons, full marathons. It's enjoyable sometimes, but not all the time. And yeah, as Libby said, when I'm nervous speaking, I kind of tend to turn it into my own like stand-up comedy routine. So throw me some pity laughs, it'll make me feel better.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's something that I greatly appreciate, obviously, because I loved your PositConf talk so much.
Thank you.
Um, and I would love to stick the link to your talk in the chat really quickly. So this is Olivia's talk. And it was called Same Data, Different Tools, Visualizing
Mhm.
with R and Python. And it was one of those things where you were like, here is a thing. This is another thing that looks exactly the same, like visualization. Here are some maps. It's like this one was made in R, this one was made in Python. Can you tell the difference? I couldn't tell the difference. I teach both R and Python. I use both. I advocate for both. Often we see people advocating for one over the other or fighting about it. So seeing a talk where you're like, look, we're all doing the same thing. They're different tools, but we can do the same stuff was so refreshing. And I enjoyed it so much. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to coding and analytics.
Sure. So I was an econ major in undergrad and then went econ for masters as well. I just had great professors who really made me interested in the subject. And then joined Summit as an analyst. So I've actually been here for almost 9 years and have climbed up the ladder in that time. Um, I think it's interesting, right? Because when I was in undergrad, data science was not an available major. So econ to data science kind of made sense then. I think now maybe it's a little bit different. But from there at Summit, it was, a lot of Stata coding at first, which then turned into some R coding, which then turned into Python and, circling or cycling through different tools.
So Stata was the entrance.
Stata was my first love, is what I always say. I will take no Stata slander. I understand that it's not as good as R and Python. I admit that, but you can't get over your first love.
I feel like that's a very econ major thing.
It is.
Very, very, yeah, very, very heavy on the. Also, anybody who comes from like A&M, who went to A&M, does a lot of Stata. Um, well, another thing that you have grown into is managing a team of data scientists, but also software engineers. How did you decide that you were ready to make that leap between I am an IC, I'm an analyst, and I'm now ready to manage people? Is that something you were excited to do and grow into? Did you have any hesitation there?
Yes, I definitely, yeah, it's a funny question. I had hesitation. I think, if you ask my manager, who I think is on this call, I definitely went to him at some point and said, I don't want to be a manager. Like, this is not the next move for me. And he was like, okay, I hear you, but, let's give it some time. Let's have you attend some goal settings with me and, some year-end reviews and just get, a little taste of what it's like. And so over time, I really grew to value spending that time with my staff and his staff and thinking about not just like how I can grow my career, but how I can help grow other people's careers and what that can teach me. I learned so much from everyone around me. So I don't know if it was one moment where I kind of woke up and was like, I'm going to be a manager this year. I'm ready. But a slow evolution of, you know, being open to the possibility instead of just saying adamantly, no, this is not for me. Um, I think my biggest holdup there was I was afraid that I would lose my coding skills or not be able to code as much. And
Hmm.
I don't code as much on some days, and then other days I'm coding from 9 to 5. So it's, about making that balance and finding what works for you.
Do you feel like being a manager has made you a more capable data scientist in any way?
Um, I don't know if I would contribute it to being a manager or if I would contribute it to working in the consulting field where I'm on multiple different projects at once. I'm working with different tools at once, different data. Um, does that make sense? I think it's more the like variety that I have in my career rather than the title, but
I think so
open to
too.
thoughts too.
So this was like a thing where your boss was like, "Well, I hear you that you maybe don't want to be a manager, but maybe just sit in on all the stuff that managers would do so you could get an idea of what it actually looked like."
Right. Yeah. And he's a great boss if he's on the call. He's the best boss ever. Genuinely he is though. So I don't want to make it sound like he was like, no, I'm not listening. You're going to be a manager, whether you want to or not. It was just let's just try it out. I think it can be scary to do things that you're unfamiliar with. So presenting the opportunity to do it in baby steps and just see what it's like really helped.
I think that that's amazing because I've been fighting being a manager forever as well. And I've said that forever
Welcome.
as well. And everybody always says, like, well, maybe it's not what you think it is, and maybe it looks different everywhere. We have an anonymous question in Slido that I think is a great follow on here. It says, I recently stepped into a management role and I've been doing less hands on coding, more project oversight. Because I'm not directly building things anymore, I sometimes question whether I'm truly contributing. Do you have any advice
Mm.
on reframing that thought?
Yeah, I completely relate to that question and that frame of mind, but I would say you're helping guide the people who are developing and producing the code and producing the models or the output, whatever it is. um, they need that guidance. You're helping shape their careers, and I also have carved out a lot of my role in my coding in code reviews and different sessions where we walk through the code together and they can see kind of how my mind works and thinks about the code, and I can see how their mind works. So I get it. I think it's a little bit of imposter syndrome, which I pretty much have once a week at this point. But I would just like
Right.
constantly remind yourself that like you are helping grow their careers, and that is extremely valuable.
It is extremely valuable. You're also like doing glue work, which I think somebody just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned in the chat. Glue work is extremely important. It just doesn't always feel as visible when it doesn't have this like tangible output, this thing that you hand over to somebody, right? But it doesn't
Right.
mean that it's not super valuable. Um, Thank you, Anonymous Asker, for asking that question. Well, I wanted to actually rewind just a little bit and ask
Sure.
more of a context building question because I sort of skipped that and went straight to I want to talk about your conference talk because I loved it so much. Um, I would love to hear a little bit more about Summit and the work that you do. If you could give us some context on like the types of problems that you solve, the types of data you work with, the types of clients you work with. Totally understand if you cannot specifically specify each of those things, but sort of a general description, because we come from all different industries and backgrounds, and it would be great to kind of have examples.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say it's very diverse. We are very well known for federal loans and working with federal credit programs. So think of things like small business loans, or USDA gives out farm loans, or we have international loans going out from DFC. So lots of loan data, which is, how much is the loan? What is the interest rate on the loan? What is the risk associated with the loan? There's kind of I don't want to say a standard structure, but right, you generally need X, Y, and Z when you issue a loan, and that data is consistent across data sets. So it makes moving from one federal loan program to another a little bit easier, although they all have their unique complexities. But then we also we have work with the Department of Justice. And so we help on litigation analytics, supporting testifying experts and running the analysis for them. And that data can be absolutely anything, right? It's whatever DOJ is investigating at that time. So currently, we are working with some dispensing data from across the country and looking at prescriptions that were filled. And then we also, on the non-federal side, we work with a great company who is known for education analytics. It's actually the name of the firm. And we work with them on the New York State education data. So looking at, I believe it is middle school data, looking at grades and trying to predict attendance and performance and are those correlated, and looking at all those different things. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, which makes it really interesting for me. I'm not known for being able to sit on one project for years on end. I like jumping around and seeing the variety, but yeah, open to more questions on it.
I would love to augment that really quickly, and then we'll hop back over to Slido with a question around what tools you're using. So you mentioned R and Python. Your talk
Yes.
was all in R and Python. I
Mm.
would love to hear what you generally work in, but then also sort of like what your team is made up of, because I remember you saying that you did manage software engineers as well.
Yep. I would say like I help there's another manager that I work directly
Okay.
with, and so they do fall under him, but we do most of our like year ends and goal settings together. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that alone. But yeah, as I would, tools are we're a little bit scattered everywhere. Part of it is client preference. So a lot of federal clients prefer to work in SaaS. So we do have contracts that use SaaS, and that's their preference. There are clients, great, we'll use SaaS. Our Python, I would say that we're kind of phasing out of Stata. We also, use SQL pretty heavily on our projects. We're in the cloud a lot, AWS and Azure. Um, Git, of course, everybody's favorite. But I think that's the most part of it.
Do you do any reporting work or have reports that you deliver as a deliverable, like through Quarto or any other publishing tools?
Yes, we do.
Or
So
Shiny, I
we
guess, too, right? As dashboards.
yes, we definitely have quite a few our Shiny apps. Most of them again are tied to those federal loan programs. So
Mm, okay.
we're going in and users can input loan information and it'll spit out, okay, great, here's what your cash flow looks like, here's the output of that loan scenario that you just put in. So we have three or four our Shiny apps that do that currently. And then Quarto, yes, so we did a big in 2024 summit, took too many people to Posit conference, and I'd say too many people because you like could see us in the crowd coming. I was like, there were like 20 of us all marching together, and it looked silly, but it was very, very fun. And that year, I just remember being very big on Quarto. There were a lot of Quarto talks, and so one of our staff, when we got back, we were working on a report for the New York State Education Department, and she was like, "Let's do it in Quarto this year. Let's try it out. Let's see what it is." So we shifted from, I think that was a shift from R Markdown to Quarto that year. But yeah, everyone always wants to try out the new thing, and we see how we can make that work on projects.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you for all of that context. And Rachel says, there's never too many people at PosiConf. Bring
we
everybody.
we wore matching T-shirts one day, and it was too overwhelming. It was too much.
I love it. Okay, well, we have so many questions for you. I'm gonna hop in and get started with Reed. Reed Merrill had asked a question, and I would love if Reed could ask it live. I don't see an asterisk in there, so I think that's okay. Let's see if we can find
Yeah.
Reed and help them unmute. Hey!
Hello. Long time listener, first time caller. So I work with this little academic organization that studies politicians using surveys, and so I'm always keyed into privacy, and I'm curious about how privacy works with some of the data that you're using. So like are there just rigid protocols that you follow? What was it like to learn to use those? And yeah, anything else you can say about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question, and I think it's like ever evolving, right? And it maybe gets a little bit more scrutinized every year, even. Um, I'd say, obviously, as a company, if we are hosting the data ourselves, we have to meet certain standards. Lots of ATUs, which are authority to use, and ATOs, authority to operate, that government agencies issue to us. And it shows that we've passed, it's genuinely hundreds of security tests that we have to show we're monitoring and improving upon, and, reach X, Y, and Z metrics every year. A lot of that is helped if you're hosting the data in AWS or Azure, which are both already FedRAMP compliant, or I don't know what the right term is there, but FedRAMP is a big security that uh, puts out, policies and rules and regulations around specifically government data. And so, if you're building a new product or a solution, or I won't say a report because it wouldn't reply there. But if you're trying to sell the government something and you get it FedRAMP approved, that goes a long way in getting rid of security issues. But yeah, no, you're right. It's a constant, I don't want to say battle, but it's constantly on our minds, and constantly, we have to be really careful about it.
Thank you so much for your first time question. That makes me so excited to read. Thanks for asking. Okay, the next one is anonymous. It says, some people on my team are more knowledgeable than I am in certain areas, and I worry that I shouldn't be managing them. How do you lead effectively in this situation? And anonymous asker, I freaking love this question. Well done.
I relate so much to that question. I genuinely think everyone I manage is smarter than I am. And I don't
Hmm.
know if
Hmm.
that's imposter syndrome, or if that's just what it is, right? I mean, you can't be the smartest in the room about every single thing, and data science encompasses like so much, or encompasses so much. So I think, I look at it as, I'm never going to like, one of our staff is an expert in our Shiny. I mean, she can spin up a fabulous app in an hour. It would take me probably 2 days, right? I'd get there, but it would take me longer. And just looking at it as, okay, how can I help best guide her? How can I think of like, all right, you're great at doing this in our Shiny. Why don't we try this widget? Like, why don't we try expanding your skills in X, Y, or Z? But I'm never, I think if you start comparing yourself to your team, you're going to feel understandably a little bit down about yourself. But also, like, that's amazing that you have a team that, feels smarter than you in subjects. And like, I think that really shows that you're a great leader and you're supporting their careers, right? Like, they're amazing people underneath you and you get to work with them. And I just like genuinely don't think you should feel bad about that. I think it just goes to show how awesome you are as a leader.
Exactly. And not that human beings are tools, but like, wouldn't you want the sharpest tool, right? Like, wouldn't you want like
Mm-hmm.
the very, very best to do this stuff? And also you are smoothing the way for them and empowering them to do stuff. So empowering smart people and
Right.
capable people to do cool stuff um, is amazing. I love it.
Right.
Anonymous asker, fantastic question. Thank you so, so much for asking. Okay, I would love to hop to John Mazaros. You have a question that I'd love you to ask live if you're available, and I'm going to highlight it in Slido.
All right.
And
I,
hope,
I think I'm unmuted.
yeah, you are,
All
John.
right. Great. Hello. Hi, Olivia. I also was an economist, like by training, and transitioned in the data scientist role. And I also happened to work for the federal government for a while.
Oh, hello.
Um, yeah. No, I actually know somebody, well, like secondhand at Summit Consulting. But
Oh, cool.
my question for you is like, when you're working with like your federal clients, for instance, how do you go about like if you're redoing their legacy systems or code or whatever, getting buy-in to rebuild that? Because I had a lot of issues with this at the Postal Service. Like getting buy-in to do that and also like not offending people that built these systems because sometimes that causes the whole thing to like shut down. Probably your clients
Yeah.
approach you to deal with the issue that they may have, but I just wondered how you kind of navigate because for maybe some of the people on the call, the politics and some of these agencies and things can be a little weird. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear where you're coming from. We also one of the things that Summit is known for is model validations, where we go in and review someone's model before it goes to audit. And like we are on their side. We want to make sure they pass the audit, but people can be very particular about their model and they don't want to admit that it could change in X, Y, or Z. So I definitely get having to deal with different personalities. I think a lot of it, and this is maybe not a helpful answer, is having that like trust and relationship with your client. So I in no way can take credit for our latest modernization effort where we moved everything from Stata and VBA to Python and an Azure front end UI. But that is a client we've worked with for over a decade. And the leader on that project has been here at Summit for a decade. So they've had that relationship. And instead of focusing on what's wrong with the current model, they really focused on why this new modernized solution would be better. And right, like it also was like given to them in small bits. So instead of completely overhaul your model, get rid of all of Excel and Stata and transition to this technology that you don't understand, you will not be able to code review it yourself. It was, well, we could really reduce model runtime because right now it's taking 2 hours to run this model, and we could make it run in 5 minutes, and like small bits and maybe even small proof points if you're able. But I do really think a lot of it is that relationship building, which does take time, and it can be really frustrating when you're like, I know this would be better.
I would also love advice from anyone in the chat about a piece of what John asked, which was just how to get things done without offending people. I'm a super direct person, and I'm also really, really unfiltered, and I'm also just weird. So sometimes I am worried that I am offending people at all times by just saying things and being like, "Oh man, that person's not going to understand just how weird I am and how normal this is for me." So yeah, if anybody in the chat has some advice for me on that part, I'd love it. Thanks, John, for asking that question. It was amazing. James says, keep DSH weird as a longtime Austin resident. Get it. Okay. Let's hop back over to um Slido here. I saw Arsenis had a question, and I'd love it if Arsenis could ask that one live. I know he'll be up for that.
Hey, Olivia, thanks.
There he
How's it going,
is.
Olivia? Thanks for chatting with us today.
Of
Um,
course.
so much like John just mentioned a moment ago, I also I'm a former economist for the federal government, and I also consulted for the federal government, etc. So I know I'm curious about how your career transition happened, what kind of made you made the jump to focus a little bit more on data work, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think what's interesting about Summit is we've always been a federal consulting firm, but grounded in data. So our
Mhm.
founding partner is actually an econ PhD. So right, his very first project was statistical sampling and very econ heavy. So that's always kind of been our focus. So when I joined, I started working on the model validation team that I talked about a minute ago, and that was mostly in SAS. But I'd say as my career progressed, you get a little bit more familiar with the different types of projects Summit has, and you're able to, kind of pick and choose a little bit more. And, if the client doesn't have a preference and you really want to learn Python, you can say, please, 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 boss, will you let me use Python on this project? And there's kind of like opportunities there. But I think I would say like I'm really lucky to work here just for the fact that we were founded by the econ PhD, and so that we are rooted in data, and it's never been an issue of work on this project that has no data, you'll never use coding or open Excel. All of our projects, whether they're in Excel or Stata or Python, have some sort of data element where you can like grow your skills and, test them as well.
Cool. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Arsenis. Let's see. I have a very, very situational question here. It's an
Okay.
anonymous question. It says, I recently asked an employee to present their work, but the room was very critical and offered mostly unconstructive feedback. On reflection, I could have chaired the meeting better. What
Mm.
strategies do you use to keep feedback sessions positive and helpful?
Oh,
What a
that's a good
good
question.
question. Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking I literally just asked the question, how do I not offend people, right? Because I'm weird and direct.
I think, oh, it's so hard, right? Because everyone's personality is different and
Right.
it can be hard
And
to.
maybe it's just a good place to just acknowledge that this is a hard thing, right? Like let's just
Mhm.
validate that it's difficult.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great starting point. This is difficult. I mean, right, I would almost suggest sending a quick email or having a 5 minute chat with the feedback givers beforehand to kind of set the this is what we're here for, this is what we're hoping to get out of it, and maybe give them like a more direct mindset instead of whatever they come up with in the moment, which can, I'm sure, come off as critical if they haven't had time to like think about the impact it will have. I also just try, I hope my boss is still on the call for this. This is funny that he's here. He, is always saying, and I try to repeat it in my head as well, to always assume positive intent. So even if the feedback sounds really critical and that maybe even the tone is critical, try to assume it's coming from a good place and that it is actually for some good purpose. I think also goes a long way, having that mindset shift. But yeah, no, I mean it's really really hard. I've been in
It's
that situation.
I wonder if maybe I could compare it to running a hangout a little bit or running a live event because I do it twice a week now. And I will say that if you are chairing a meeting, you can set the tone by just describing what will be happening, right? Like so and so is going to be presenting this. We're here for this purpose. This is a feedback session. I know all of you are going to lead with curiosity, and I know that all of you are going to do such a great job of encouraging and asking questions for clarification instead of, you know, having accusatory tones or whatever. Um, you're steering a ship. So if you start by like laying a good foundation about what we're doing here, I think that it can be really helpful. It's just like the sort of spiel at the beginning of a hangout. This is why we're here. We're an accepting and a loving place to be, right? Okay. Thank you so much for that fantastic question, anonymous asker, whoever you are. Adam, I saw that you had a question. Would you like to ask that live? Adam T, who I think is Adam Taggart. There he is. Hey, Adam.
Sorry,
We
I'm
go.
trying to unmute quick enough.
Yeah, that's cool.
There you go.
Thank you. Hi, Olivia. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us today. Somebody actually anonymously replied to my question in Slido, and so they've helped me rephrase it. I'd like to phrase it better than I have it there.
Oh, great.
When you're hiring or when you're talking to data people like us who are thinking of moving from academia to industry, or maybe they are, or like they've already made the jump and now they find themselves in the deep end a little bit, what skills or kind of attributes, personality traits do you get the vibe from them that says this person can actually sort of turn from a research analysis focused mindset to a production deployment style way of thinking? Or are there any red flags which make you go, oh, this person is still very much research science and probably isn't ready for industry?
Sure. I will like start by saying I don't have a ton of experience talking to people who want to make that shift, but I think, going to grad school and I have lots of friends who are in academia, I will give my best shot at an answer. I think it kind of applies to anyone I interview though. I'm personally always looking for curiosity, right? So, okay, maybe you solved the problem, but where else could we go? Or what's the next step? Or how can we make it better, right? So instead of just being like, I made a regression model and here is the output, thumbs up, amazing. Like, okay, could we make it better? Should we try a different specification? How would you present it to the client? How would you explain it to a non-technical audience, right? Maybe always going just like one step further there. But I don't know. I don't want to, I mean, I don't have any experience shifting from academia to industry myself. And I'm sure there are lots of differences, but I really just think being curious and being, open to having conversations and exploring it goes a long way.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking that question. If anybody has experience with that in the chat.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we all hang out together is because we all have different experiences and can come together and help each other. So if anybody has anything to add, I saw Russ just added something as well to Adam's question. Throw your experience in the chat for us so that we can talk a little bit more about it. All right. Thanks, Adam. We have an anonymous question that says, do you have any tips or frameworks for getting to know your team members? For example, how they prefer to be engaged, how they like to receive feedback, how they see their own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am gonna answer this maybe in a roundabout way, but when I first started as a manager, so I'm in my third year now, with my team, we started these things that we call 9 boxes. Olivia, am I allowed to put one in the chat so everyone can see what it is?
I mean, you have my permission to put anything
Okay,
in the
I didn't know
chat.
if I had the powers to put it in the chat.
You absolutely do.
And so it's a very silly icebreaker, is what it is, right? But it starts that conversation and like gives you things to ask about and follow up with them in your one-on-ones, which then I really do think opens the door for, okay, how you are liking when I ask you these questions, and you like when I give you open feedback, or you seem a little bit more reserved and let me like frame this in a different way for you. So people just answer that question. They say, oh, I'm a 1 today, and here's, a little short why. But I think that doing these silly icebreakers, and they are so silly, I recognize that, like it goes a long way. The team gets attached to them, and you get a little bit more insight into how their brain works and even just how they're feeling that week in that moment. So it definitely helps a lot. I also, my first posit conference, did make Hadley answer one, and that is my claim to fame at my company.
Well, speaking of conference stuff, I talked about your talk a lot. I would love it if you could give us a little rundown on why you wanted to give a conference talk and why you chose your topic. Like what spoke to you there? For anybody who hasn't watched it, maybe you could give like a 30-second rundown on what it was, be more eloquent than I was.
Sure. Yeah, we did a small data challenge at Summit through, oh my gosh, I should have brushed up on this before, but Data Viz Society, I believe. Every February, they do a Black History Month Data Viz challenge centered around W.E.B. Du Bois and his artwork. So it was recreating something that was drawn in, I believe it was pencil, in R or Python, and you want to get it as close to the original as possible, right? You want to try and make it feel like it was hand drawn instead of like, this is a graph that I clearly created in ggplot and used, 3 lines to make it. So we did a little challenge. Part of it was to have Python users learn R and vice versa. And then we were like, the idea was, oh, we'll have everyone vote at the end and see which output is better. And then at the end of the challenge, we got to our 2 outputs and they look identical. So the vote was basically 50-50. No one could decide, oh, that's Python, that's R. We all just agreed that they looked the same. So it was a really interesting find. I actually really expected there to be some sort of difference between the two. And then giving a posit talk, I hate public speaking, just like absolutely hate it. And it's something that I've been working on my whole career. I'm terrified before. A fun fact is that I started college as a theater major, so that clearly didn't work with stage fright and being afraid of public speaking. But I went to Posit in 2024, thought it was amazing, was so envious of all the speakers, and said, you know what, you can do this. Like, submit a talk, you can do it, push yourself to do it. And the data challenge was kind of just like a natural, this could be a really cool talk to give.
Well, I absolutely don't think that anybody who watches your talk will ever think that you don't like public speaking, but I'll join you on that. I also don't like public speaking and was shaking in my boots my entire lightning talk that I gave at Conf in 2023. So, you know what? You guys fake it till you make it sometimes actually works.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, everybody definitely go check out her conf talk, but also definitely go think about signing up for Posit Conf. And like, if you need some help convincing your boss, we actually have an article that's, I think, from a couple of years ago, which is like how to help convince your boss to let you attend PositConf, which is really, really helpful. I think that it's still valuable a few years on.
I
And then I
vividly
wanted,
remember making that when I was like on a long car ride and I was
was
just
that
like
you?
doing it on my computer. And the fact that that doc is like still living on is amazing.
I still send that to people all the time because that's a question that I get a lot is like, I really want to attend Posit Conference. I see it as a um, professional development opportunity and I want to help get my company to pay for it. And I'm like, wait, 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 but it's also like really good for your company that you go learn this stuff and that you meet people and that if your company is recruiting, that you meet all of these very capable people that you could recruit and like it's such a valuable thing all around 360 value. So I really love that we have it as something that we can give people. I also have one more resource that I want to share. If we step back one question um, about getting to know people, because something that I have been meaning to do with Rachel, actually, Rachel's my boss, you guys, um, is a user guide to working with me. And Julie Zhuo, I don't know how to say her last name, has an article on Medium that is a user guide to working with you. Um, it's great. It contains a template if you scroll down, user guide to working with me, and it has things like how I view success, how I communicate, things I do that may annoy you, which is really interesting because I think I'm a really annoying person. What gains and loses my trust, my strengths, my growth areas. Those are opportunities for growth. And then there are some optional sections like what I expect from people I manage, how I give and receive feedback. I don't think the how I give and receive feedback one should be optional. I think it should be front and center. Um, and then also, she includes like a sample. I think that this is so valuable. And I'm going to promise Rachel that I'm going to fill one out. Okay, we have a follow-up from Natasha, has an asterisk on it. So I'm going to ask it for Natasha. Is there anything you do to prepare before giving a talk since they make you nervous?
Oh, yes. Practice a million times. Like practice more than you think you need to practice. I was pacing my hotel room for 2 days straight, just saying the slides over and over. And I know that sounds boring. Like that is honestly really boring advice. And it's honestly also kind of painful in the moment because you're nervous and you'd rather be doing anything else than focusing on this thing that's making you nervous. But, the more you do it, the more it's in your brain, just the less likely that anything is gonna happen that you're not expecting it to happen. And I'd even say too, like I practiced in front of my coworkers, right? I took their feedback. I practiced with everyone staring at me silently. I did it virtually, different environments and just again, practice, practice, practice.
Yep. Practice, practice, practice. Before my comp talk, I spent a week cat sitting and dog sitting for my friend who was going out of town. And so every single day, twice a day when I went over, I gave my comp talk to her animals in her
I
house.
love that.
So I had this like a captive audience that couldn't tell me anything bad, and they were very cute and fuzzy, and that worked so so well because I tell you what, I gave the talk to my husband, and I hated that experience. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. He told me all kinds of things I didn't want to hear. But what was really helpful is if you sign up to give a talk at Posit Conference, you're going to be put into a pool of people
Mm,
who are prepping with coaches who are professional speaking coaches. So you're going to be practicing over and over again already in front of this group of people who are all invested in you succeeding and getting really good feedback from a professional. So I'll put that out there as
the
like a
coaches are great.
yes, the coaches are great. It was like a
They're
huge
so great.
benefit of doing a Posit Conf talk. Okay, thank you, Natasha, for asking that question. It was a great one. Whoo, we have 14 minutes left. Can we fit in our last four questions? Let's try. We have an anonymous question that says, I manage a team where some people focus on doing their job reliably while others are really high achievers. I respect both mindsets, but how do you keep both groups motivated and engaged? And I really like this question because I remember talking with Olivia earlier, not earlier, you guys weren't there, on another time about keeping teams motivated. Um, I'd love to chat more about this, Olivia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, like it's hard, right? Because every human being is different. We're motivated by different things. I have found a common ground between I'm going to just say all tech people, data scientists, software engineers, you name it, is challenging them in some sort of way, or maybe not even challenging, but giving them an opportunity to learn something new, to do something a little bit different. That has worked out really well for my team and other teams here as well. So, right, we did that data viz challenge that I presented on. We just actually did another data viz challenge across the entire firm where we encouraged data scientists to team up with staff who had expertise in federal credit loan programs so they could create a very specific, federal credit visualization. That was a very summit challenge. Doesn't sound as quite as exciting, but I think, pushing them to say, okay, do it in Python. You're great at R, try it in Python, giving them little opportunities that break up the monotony of their, day to day, even if they are super motivated and super high achieving, like giving people an outlet to just be different than their 9 to 5, but still in the 9 to 5 environment, I found has worked really well to like reset their mind and reset their motivation and just get them excited about something.
Fantastic. All right. Also, I'd like to hear in the chat what motivates you, because I have a feeling that I'm motivated by very different things from other people. And because I am just so brilliantly ADHD, a lot of my motivations are very uniquely ADHD things like novelty. So if you gave me something where you were like, here's this challenge to do something in a new thing and it has a really short deadline, I would be so much more motivated to do that than here is all this time, take all the time you need, do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
that would be horrible for me. But I know people who are like, I really love room to run with zero boundaries. Like, cool, awesome. Not for me though, right? So it's great to know what motivates people.
Yeah.
Nellie says deadlines. Same. I love that Isabella said jinx because Isabella is so good at helping me stay on a deadline. When I have a deadline for Isabella, I appreciate her so much checking in and being like, are you done with this? And I'm like, no, but thanks for asking because now I know I need to be. All right. Thank you so much, Anonymous Asker. Let's go to Joey. Joey Knapp had a question. Would you like to ask that one live? Joey or Joseph? There he is. Hey.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Libby. Hi,
Hey.
Olivia. I was wondering if you could talk more about the different kinds of projects that you work on. If you're doing a lot of one-off reports, if you're kind of having ongoing relationships where you're like the data team for this one organization, and how often you are like building technical capacity on the team that you're working with. And also bonus if you say what your favorite is.
Yeah, I think that's such an annoying answer. I hate that I'm about to say this. It depends on the project, right? Some projects are very much, we have our monthly report, we have our quarterly report. It is always in this format, blah, blah, blah. Other projects are much more ad hoc and you have more room to play around with it and, see where you can grow with it. I'm trying to think of like a fun example, but like federal loans, some people really like federal loans, so maybe this is very fun for everyone. Right, they are on in September, it's called reestimate season, and they have to run a ton of reports and statistics and metrics from truly September 1st until the end of the month. They're due October 1st. If you're late, that is like, I don't even think you can be late. I don't know what happens. It wouldn't be good. So like they have their time frames and they know about those things. Outside of that, I would say that there's a lot of opportunity to be like, okay, well, we're making this monthly report, but what if we added in this other really cool metric that I found, as I was researching the data a little bit, or even like accidentally stumbled upon, which has happened to me. So I really think all of our projects are a little bit about like making it your own. And I see in the chat that some people don't like that open-endedness. Sorry,
Nope.
everyone. But if I really think that on every project, there's a way to grow in the skill that you want to grow in. And it's about just like having the curiosity and creativity to find a way to get there. So try and like step back from the monthly, quarterly, typicalness and think about like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Who do you want to be? and like find a way to get there, work with your boss or your colleagues to get there.
I love it. Thank you for asking that question, Joey. Um, we have 8 minutes left. We have a couple of questions left in Slido. I want to ask this one because it leads very nicely into a career advice question, which I would love to ask you next. So, we have an anonymous one that says, in my team, some members reflect quietly while
Mm.
others jump straight into discussions. Any tips for making sure everyone's voice is heard? And I'm going to shout out the book Quiet in case you have not read it. Go read the book Quiet if you want help identifying with people who are reflective, quiet people. What do you think, Olivia? Any experiences?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I actually started my career as a quiet person, and no one at my company believes me except the ones who were, here at during that time. But all of our new staff are like, you are the loudest person at this company. There's no way that you ever started quiet. So I can like approach it from being that person as well. And I think it's about building comfortability and building trust within the room and within the team. Um, I I don't want to like I do call on people, but I call on people that I know, gently, and I lead it with a question that I know that they can answer, that I know they have an opinion on. And again, I really think it's grounded in that trust and, feeling comfortable to have them say, I don't know. Like I'd love to look into it, but I just don't know. And like always having them realize that's an acceptable answer as well. But I do think that it's really important to give shy people the chance to speak and trying to make them feel comfortable the best you can, and sometimes that's just like being vulnerable yourself, right, and saying, I don't know what my opinion is on this. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts, or how can you guide me, right, instead of having everyone in the room assume that like you're looking for a certain answer, like to go a certain way.
Yeah, or that you're looking for perfection. I think
Right.
that is you just gave like the best possible advice that you could have given, which was just cultivate psychological safety and
Right.
model that, you know, penetrable thing where you're like, I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. We're not here for that. Morgana in the chat said, quiet to loud, like that quiet to loud transition is a sign that you feel safe there. And yes,
Mhm.
exactly. Like if you know a quiet person who is quiet in front of other people, and then when you're one on one with them, they can't stop talking, it's about safety. And I have friends like that. I'm one of those people sometimes too. Wonderful, wonderful. There's also an article that I wrote, a blog post that I wrote, that is about curiosity, hiring for curiosity, developing this like team structure that's safe for curiosity is also like a really, really great thing because often some people who are quiet and listening are questioning as well. They're like, I have questions that are unanswered that I am not going to take action or say anything on unless I know more. And maybe they're just not feeling safe enough to ask those to kind of get things moving. Thank you so much, Anonymous Asker. That was great. And I would love it if we could just do a little career advice question. Hopefully I'm not putting you too much on the spot, but is there a piece of career advice that has really helped you or that you like to give other people, or maybe something you wish you had been told or learned much earlier in your career?
Yeah, I think I hinted at it a little bit already, and I will be honest, I heard it on my very first data science hangout ever, and I've tried to think of something better, but I just think it's the best, and it's do it scared, right? Like if you see someone and you're like, wow, I wish I was giving that talk, like submit a talk, even though it's terrifying. It is terrifying, I agree, but just, do it anyway, try it anyway. You could be up on stage giving the talk. You're just as skilled as the people everyone else is. You're just as skilled. You're just as capable. And the only thing holding you back is nerves. So just do it. And then if you hate it, you never have to do it again.
You never have to do it again. That's true. And also, like in the beginning, when somebody asked the question about like, hey, I think that everybody on my team is smarter than I am. How do I manage them? There were so many people in the chat. If you're watching this later, you can't see this, but there were so many people in the chat who were just saying like, yes, that's how everybody feels. That's how we all feel. However you're feeling, you're not alone in feeling that way.
Yeah.
And also, you'll probably surprise yourself. One thing that I we have an internal sort of little mini posit internal conference where we get together for work week, and that's coming up in March. And I will be giving a lightning talk there about my experience with meeting people to have on the Hangout, where everybody that I talk to has this hesitation where they're like, I don't know why you want me to talk at the Hangout. Like, why me? I don't have anything important to say. I don't have anything interesting to say. And sometimes the people who are most adamant about that, about the fact that they have absolutely nothing to share that anybody would care about, turn out to have so many questions asked in Slido that we can't answer them all, right? Like they are so interesting to other people, and they had no idea, and they've just been staying quiet and assuming that they are not good enough, not fun, not interesting, don't know anything. You really truly don't know until you go talk to people, but I guarantee you you're more interesting than you think you are. Okay, so we had one more question I saw in Slido from Anil, and I'm going to read it really quickly since we only have 2 minutes. It's a technical one. Feel free
Okay.
to pivot with this one. It was, have you tried pyspark.sql? Seems good at parallel computing for large scale queries, etc. And do you validate ML pipeline for government or just for end results? Or for governance,
Um,
maybe.
I personally have not tried PySpark. I do think we have someone at Summit working on one project that uses that, but I don't have experience there. And then, yes, we do have a small team who were validating ML models at a government agency.
Amazing. Sheldon says, thank you for the chat. Sheldon, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. I know that it is a holiday week, it's spring break for a lot of people. I appreciate you spending your Thursday with us. I cannot wait to see you next week. And I also can't wait to see you on Tuesday if you come to the Data Science Lab, pos.it/ds lab, because Davis Vaughn is going to be joining us, and he is going to be walking through, Isabella and I, the new dplyr functions. So that we have new functions for filtering, specifically filtering out, new functions for recoding values inside of variables to kind of patch a hole that had been in dplyr for a while with recoding. They're so fun, but this is also a chance to talk to somebody who has all the behind the scenes details of how functions get added to a package like dplyr in the tidyverse. What decisions are made in the background, what conversations happen, what does it mean to have something be superseded and deprecated as far as a function like case matches being. So come with all of your questions for Davis, hang out with Isabella and I, and we will see you on Tuesday.
And
Thank
you can
you.
join Isabella on Wednesday for her marketing mixed modeling demo.
Yes, you absolutely can.
You
Oh,
can
and if you're
hang out with
looking
us every day if you all want
if you're
to.
looking for one more thing to do during a potential spring break, March 3rd, we have Satish from Johnson& and Johnson, who's going to be giving a talk. We're not having a data science lab that day because it's spring break, so you can join that one instead. All right, everybody. I will see you in a few days potentially. Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.